There she is. I
Ah,
see
that's
you
better.
now.
Yep, good
Look like
stuff.
you're refreshed even at this late hour of not the night.
Ah, yes,
Have you
yes.
been out night clubbing this evening?
No, I did go to the Opera House though on my birthday last week, and we listened to traditional Ukrainian folk music, which was lovely.
Mhm.
And yeah, that was really, really beautiful concert. And
With
the Opera House here is beautiful.
the string instruments and all?
Yes, and they had traditional what we would think of in England as being sort of medieval period instruments. Was really
Uh,
interesting. I don't know what they would call that here, but yeah, they were. It was really stunning. Yeah, really nice.
I would have loved that. Next
Yeah.
time, next time we'll have
Yes.
a date.
Yeah. Yeah. You
Okay.
must come here. You must come here. It would be fascinating for you.
I would love to.
Yeah.
Tell
Yeah.
me about what you got on your mind today.
I want to talk about the the battle, as it were, the spiritual war that is taking place over the Slavic nations. Um, Ukraine is a Slavic nation.
Mhm.
This is not every nation. I'm sort of thinking really of that the band down Central Europe, which of course, if you're Polish, you call yourself a Central European. If you're English, we think of Poles as Eastern Europeans, but they're not. They would say they're Central Europeans, and Russians are Eastern Europeans. There is a huge war taking place spiritually over these nations, and it's a war that Britain has already lost. Canada's already lost it. Australia's already lost it. New Zealand's already lost it. America, you're still fighting it. You're still fighting. The government have not destroyed your religion nor your freedom yet, but
They're
they're
working hard at it.
absolutely they are working hard at it, and
Mhm.
it's happening here too. And so I really want to talk about that today.
Okay,
And
please commence. We have a little audience here right now in
okay,
the house,
all right,
and we're
that's
all
nice,
just like chomping at the bit.
lovely. Okay, well, I'm going to first off show. Let me just share my screen. Can you enable that for me, please,
Of
Jackson?
course.
Um, I am fascinated by the history of the Slavic nations. I have studied a little bit about Tartaria. Have you heard anything about Tartaria?
No.
Well, this is a really interesting subject. There was once a great nation called Tartaria, which is where Russia is now, and it's never talked about.
Will you spell the first of that, please?
T A T
Oh,
T
oh,
A T A R I A is how
yes.
it's
You know,
spelled.
as a matter of
Tartaria.
fact, I have a collection of that music that I've listened to a
Yeah.
lot. It's very interesting, and
Mm.
it's really not either European or Asian.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I have heard that those who were obviously like the northern 10 tribes of Israel, when they were dispersed, actually went north and became this nation of
Mhm.
Tartaria. Is it possible? I don't know. I'm no great historian, but I find the theory fascinating. And I particularly find it fascinating when I think about the days of the week. So let's have a look. I'm going to start by sharing this page here. Let's see if this works. Okay, you can see that. This is just from Wikipedia. It's just the names of the days of the week. And in many countries around the world, they have some variation of Sabbath as their Saturday. It's not unheard of. Obviously, a lot of countries don't. What is interesting is that in almost all of the Slavic nations, we see that the names of the days of the week are numbered. So we see some of them actually are like the numbers. So in Russian, we start the week. So in fact, the days are numbered from Monday in so many of these Slavic nations. So when we see day 2, vtornik, that literally is almost the same as the Russian word for second, as in second day of the week. Четверг, today, that's Thursday, the 4th day. The number 4 is четыре. Пятница, the 5th day. Piet is 5. The 6th day, very confusing as to why this is.
Evidently,
But it's
this Chet mean day.
Chet, no, no, it's Chetverg. It comes from the word chetiri, which means four.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's literally they're saying that's the fourth day, which is Thursday. And then all of a sudden, when we look, we see day 6, and we have a complete list down here. So we've got Subota, Sabbath,
Yeah.
right there. And Belarusian, Subota.
Do you
Great
want,
list.
do you
Subota,
know the
Subota.
story of Methodius
No.
and Carol, who came into the Slavic countries in the wee Middle Ages and gave them an alphabet and codified their,
Ah, yes, yes. This wonderful Cyrillic
yes.
alphabet, which is very beautiful and is fascinating as well, because the Cyrillic alphabet has the s sound, which we don't have in English. We have to make that with more than one letter, but of course is very similar to the Hebrew as well. So I'm fascinated by that. All of these countries have a variation of Sabbath, Subota, 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 all the way down, including Ukraine.
It's ancient.
And there it is. Well, that's very interesting, because thinking about Tartaria, which I have studied a little bit, and I'm certainly in no way an expert on. There's far, far better educated people on it than me. It seemed that the tribes that were in Russia maintained, as it were, Russia as in the territory, Tartaria, maintained their separateness. So there were, I actually believe that I've heard that there were 12 tribes, but that's a little bit, doesn't quite fit the story if they were the northern 10 tribes. I'm not quite sure how that works. But it's fascinating to me that as they spread out across into this central band of Europe, these Slavic peoples, that they carried this word with them, this Sabbath with them. And I was talking to a Russian friend years ago who was a Baptist, and the Russian word for Sunday is Voskresenia. And so he asked me why I keep Saturday as the Sabbath, and the Russian word for Sabbath is Subota. So I said to him, Subota это Subota. I said, Voskresenia ne Subota. It's not, Sunday is not the Sabbath. Saturday, the Sabbath is the Sabbath, is literally how that comes out when you say it. It's so interesting that that is the case and that that's the foundation. Let's have a little look at the map, because this actually is a language map. So we see here that the Slavic languages are spoken in Russia and Belarus, Poland, Czechia, Slovakia, this whole band down Central Europe. Hungary is a Uralic language. Romanian is actually another class again, which I'm not going to try to pronounce. All the way down, of course, Ukraine, where I am, this is a Slavic language here. And the battleground that's happening right now, years ago, I noticed this, IKEA. IKEA, they have shops in Russia. So what do they promote in Russia? Homosexuality in their catalogs.
You're talking about the company that builds office furniture?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
So it's
so
this
many
is the battleground. Yep. So they know that this is not wanted in these countries. They don't want it. And yet they promote it. They won't do that in the Arab nations because they know that they would be in very, very deep trouble if they did.
Mm-hmm.
But they still promote it here. I haven't noticed if that's the case in Ukraine, but I know that as far as I know, they do have IKEA here, and no doubt that they're doing the same thing. So Ukraine is a majority Orthodox country. And it's really fascinating to me. I came here earlier in the year, and one of my first really long walks, once the pavements were no longer covered in ice, was down to one of the beaches. And as I went down this road, I walked past an Orthodox church, and I felt like this holiness pouring out of this building onto the street as I was walking past it. I was astonished to feel that.
Okay. Why?
I didn't expect
Yeah.
to.
You have a pre-existing idea about Orthodox, which I suppose
I
Orthodoxy.
I think probably because in England that's never happened. You know,
Oh,
we've the C of E is like not strong in its faith.
mm-hmm.
You know, that's the thing with the C of E. In fact, my local cathedral in England was Ely Cathedral. And I don't know if it's happened since, but a few years ago, they actually flew the pride flag from the top of the cathedral for the Pride March in the town.
Yeah, some here are doing that.
Yeah. So I feel that this is my opinion that England is pretty much, well, Britain is pretty much lost on this front. There is no resistance to this move of the enemy. Most people believe that tolerance is important and that, you know, this is the interesting thing, isn't it, with LGBT? They asked for tolerance. So people said, okay, well, we can tolerate you, you know. And then they actually said, well, no, we don't really want tolerance. They didn't really want tolerance, did they? They wanted acceptance. So, okay, so people said, okay, we'll accept you. But actually, they didn't really want acceptance either, did they? They wanted approval. And it's got to the stage now in England where, you know, homosexuals want to get married in church, and they've been pushing for that, which is really awful. So it astonished me to feel that holiness here.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a wonderful thing. It really gave me hope. And then I walked down onto the beach, took a long walk in a loop back to my apartment. And as I walked down, I walked past some little sort of seaside shacks there, and they were covered in satanic graffiti. So there is a huge spiritual war, as there is in every country. But what I'm aware of with certainly this city, which is really the limit of my experience, so I'm not going to pretend that I'm any great expert, but I have seen what's been going on in Poland. I know that many of these Central European countries are still fighting back against the LGBT push that's coming from Europe and so on. They're pushing back against all sorts of things, including immigration, and that's causing, you know, a great deal of issues in Central Europe. But there is a spiritual war. In America, Jackson, do you remember the great scandal around the Gillette advert talking about toxic masculinity?
Yes, I do.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So you can imagine the Slavic male, the average Slavic male, they are very masculine. And so again, this is all part of it. It's almost like the battle that's been lost in England has not yet been lost here. And that's really important for us to be aware of that.
You certainly are right when you say that we don't get much news of this part of the world, and nobody is really that interested in it. But when you're looking at this language map, one thing you see is a divide between Germany and Poland and on down.
Yep.
They almost have a completely different history. Yep. They have been victims time after time and been under the godless communist rule for 70 years or so.
Yep.
And so their background, lack of liberality, I guess. This might be something that is a benefit from communism that they've brought over back into Christianity, because their churches are open again and people are moving in the spirit in these areas unlike ever before.
There's a very strong religious element here.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it is incredibly important. There was a pride parade in Odessa, It's about a month or so ago. And it was very interesting to see the reaction to it, because I actually think that the counter protests were far larger than the actual Pride Parade itself. The Pride Parade was protected by the police here, but there were some serious skirmishes in the streets between the anti-LGBT groups and the police. I don't know how many were arrested. This is a battle that is still being fought here. What was also interesting was that the Orthodox Church, they actually had their own, they came together as a group in the city. I believe it was in the city gardens. And they were praying for the souls of these LGBT people. And I thought that was absolutely wonderful that was happening. I think probably in England, if you decided that you were going to go out maybe as a Christian and you were going to protest against a pride parade, you would probably be prosecuted for a hate crime, because the law is now so in their favor. It's not in the favor of any ordinary person who might disagree with that agenda, which is interesting, isn't it?
People not free to hate, people being prosecuted for hating, rather than for any kind of act or violent act. It's in Britain, the whole world is upside down today.
It is. And in England, if you make a comment and the person who is, as it were, the recipient of that comment, the person that you aim that comment at, thinks that this is offensive and that it's a hate crime, you can be prosecuted. There doesn't actually have to be any intention on your part to be hateful. You don't have to be inciting violence, as it used to be. It was only if you were inciting violence against someone. If you were speaking and you were saying that, a certain group of people should do should hurt another group of people, you could be prosecuted for that. But now in England, if I were to take my Bible onto the street and I was to proclaim that homosexuality was a sin, and somebody heard it and they didn't like it, I could be prosecuted for hate speech. And that's the way it is now in Britain. So, the fact that I'm here, the Lord has brought me to Ukraine. And this is where I am, where I have more freedom. I have religious freedom here. And when I speak to people here, and I have conversations about the things that matter to them, it's very clear that we're very much on the same page, that they want Ukraine to be, as it is, an independent country. There are some who want to go towards the EU. Whenever I speak to those people who are sort of saying, well, some people want to go towards the EU, and I say, well, you'll end up with policies that you don't like, because they will push you to do that, as they are in Poland now. Poland is part of the EU and is being, there's all kinds of criticism from the European Parliament towards Poland for their stance on LGBT. And it's really, really noticeable that is, people here do not want this. They do not want that kind of agenda taking off here.
No inversion there.
No, very much not. And that's an interesting thing. I already knew that about Russia, that, Russia and Ukraine, the cultures are really quite different. But they have some similarities. And I think that the importance of the separation of male and female roles here, that's really, really important, that women are women and men are men.
Yes.
And
that's what we mean by inversion. This is from a previous talk that we had.
Yeah.
And if you want to know more about that, please do go out to YouTube and pick up that video, because there's a very important ideas there in regards to sexual roles and inversions of those roles.
Yeah, and I think that's partly why the battle against these countries in particular is so strong. Now, I can't speak for other nations because I haven't studied them. This is not, I am not coming on here as an expert in these things. I'm quite sure that there are attacks going on against African countries too, in very much the same way, pushing them to accept agendas that they don't want. I'm quite sure that is the case. But for this people, for these peoples, as it were, it's very clear that there is an outside pressure to accept agendas that they don't want, and that those are being promoted. And that includes miscegenation is another one that's being heavily promoted here. And that's been heavily promoted right across Europe, but it's being promoted here. It's on the TV, it's in the adverts. I don't really see that that's a good thing for anybody.
Right.
You know.
Well, there's a compendium of Bible scholars that got together and decided to go through the letters of Paul and to take, there you are, and to take and to decide which of Paul's purported letters and writings were authentic and which ones were not, interpolations. So that is a very helpful study for us. There's a book out called The Authentic Letters of Paul. I use it all the time. However, when it comes to the passages in Paul that talk about male-female inversion, that's a pretty good term. Those, of course, have become interpolations. They're thrown out. They're not authentic. And I can see the various other ones because I'm trained in this area. But when it comes to those particular passages, they don't do it by their regular standards to make those determinations. So they're taking that out of the New Testament among the liberal scholars. And I think it's part and parcel of the movement because the rest of the book is great. I agree with it. But here's something else creeping in that really has nothing to do with what is going on in Paul or whatever. I think they just want to get it out.
Yeah, so the part that you're referring to is to do with a woman ruling over a man, is that right?
Well, that part, and also, and that should go because that's not consistent with Paul. But Romans chapter 1 that talks about men burning after men and women after women. This part is entirely taken out, though it doesn't conform to their rules for taking it out. I think it's insidious. It just goes in, and when you start messing with the scriptures in that way, I think you've got the possibility of the whole thing is going to break down.
That's the problem. And I've known people who've studied themselves out of their faith, or they've studied themselves out of accepting the word as being, important and vital in their lives. And that's really worrying when that happens. It's like, I wrote a blog post a couple of years ago saying, do we need to open and close our minds? Because, you don't walk into your apartment and leave the door open. Because, you never know who might walk in. So when I study something, doesn't matter what it is, it could be an entirely secular subject, I will always try to take it back to the word and try to, as it were, finish my thought on that subject with something that actually correlates to the word of God and Torah specifically as well, because I think it's really important that we always look back to the law, to go back to our foundation, because there are so many rabbit trails you can go off on where you just wander off down these roads. And this is very worrying because, again, the issue of homosexuality, it is one that there have been so many people who've argued, for example, the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, and saying, oh, no, that was to do with just not offering hospitality. Really? I don't really see that myself. That's not what I see when I see that story.
Lack of hospitality.
Yeah, that's what I've heard, that argument, and I'm no, I don't think that's what that was about at all. And I think that the more that we take the Bible just at face value, the simpler it makes things. Well,
that is our priority in life of believers, to know that book, and especially the Torah. That's something that we can will always benefit from, but even that in the last several hundred years has been nullified. I can't say it's been taken out, but it has been nullified.
Yep.
Because it's just obsolete and we don't need that anymore.
Yes. Yes.
We need it more than ever.
Yeah, we do need it more than ever. And I'm very worried about what Christians think with what we're seeing. Because we've had conversations. I've talked about this sort of mark of the beast system that's being created increment by increment. Now, I'm just going to I'm going to try and cover two little sort of subjects here, one after another. But there's no doubt in my mind that everything is moving in that direction. And I spoke to a Christian guy a few weeks ago, actually from a dating site. Seemed really nice. Okay, but then what happens? I say to him, what do you think of this vaccine then? The quack-scene, as we call it. And he said, oh, he's had it. Okay, he's had it, fine. And I said, but don't you think that we're moving in the direction of the mark of the beast with all of this? You know, what with the vaccine passports potentially moving into a social credit system that will limit you according to whether you do what the government wants you to do and believe what the government wants you to believe. You know, very concerning that they might take this down this road. And his response to me was to say that he praises the Lord that the beast system is so close. He said his plan is holy and the Lord wins. Well, that's absolutely true. Then he said, I rejoice that the Antichrist system is burgeoning.
It's like they say, rebuild a temple in Jerusalem so we can destroy it and fulfill prophecy.
I was so appalled. I was absolutely appalled. And I quoted Amos 5:18 to 20 to him that we don't want the day of the Lord. Is it not darkness and not light? You know, this is not what we want. We don't want that. And I think to myself, okay, so this guy was saved in 2009. I was saved in 2010. What if Christ had come back in 2008?
Yeah.
And you know, in 11 years of being saved and living in England, I had many conversations with friends and clients talking about my faith. People were always curious about it. Oh, I keep the Saturday Sabbath. That's interesting. Are you Jewish? And all these kind of questions. And I would talk about it. And, you know, I did not see a single person get saved. Not one. Now, my best friend here in Odessa is an awesome young woman. She is absolutely fantastic. And she's been very interested about what I'm doing. And I'm seeing the Lord moving in that girl's life. I am seeing God moving in her life, and she is aware that miracles are happening. Miracles are happening. And so I see the Lord is saving her. I see that it will not be long before she will be praying and accepting the Lord. And that to me is just the most wonderful thing.
Because that's a miracle.
It's a miracle, and it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. She has such a lovely, humble heart. And I think that's part of the reason why. I think that particularly in the people that I've so many people that I know in England, there is sort of a safe exterior of pride that says, actually, no, I don't need religion. I don't need God. But actually, you know, they do. I do every day.
Every day.
Nowhere without it, every single day. But thinking about this new world order system that's being built, well, you know, Ukraine is an interesting place because, you know, like in England, there are shops that won't take cash. They won't take cash. They wouldn't take cash throughout the lockdowns because, well, you know, there might be germs on it.
Hold just a minute. Sorry for the interruption.
That's okay, no worries. So in England, there was an issue around sort of bringing in this cashless society. They really, really want to push this. And to the point where the Bank of England have announced that they like the idea of creating a cryptocurrency. This is I think they're called central bank backed cryptocurrencies, which is supposed to make people feel that they're safer in some way. I don't know. But the idea is that it will be restricted. So the government could say, give you some money on this, electronic money, but you'd only be able to buy certain things with it. So you might only be able to buy fruits and vegetables, no alcohol for you, or no chocolate for you, whatever it might be. This is a huge control grid that's being created.
We have that here now.
Yes. So this push is happening. Interestingly, of course, in England back in the Second World War era, we had coupons.
Yeah.
There was rationing and coupons. We're kind of heading in the same direction again, I think, with what these globalists want to do. They want to control the population. They want to cull the population, and just an exceptionally horrible time coming for so many countries. But what is interesting is that here in Ukraine, I think it'll be a very long time before that happens, because people don't trust banks. They don't trust the government. They're not going to go along with that. If you buy property here, you usually buy it in cash, literally in US dollars. People don't put money in the bank. They don't trust the banks.
That's
they've had a bank crash
strange.
here before.
In US dollars.
In US dollars, yeah. Yeah. And
It's doing in Chinese.
Well, I wonder how long it will be that will be the case, because obviously the dollar has been having a bit of a difficult time, which is not great if you're transacting in dollars here, because you're sort of losing a bit. But it's very interesting to me that there does seem to be a huge resistance here, which is a leave-over, I think, from their Soviet history. Paying lip service to these things, like, in a supermarket, you're supposed to wear a mask. But really, you're only going to be asked when you get to the till. And if you haven't got a mask when you get to the till, you get sold one. So literally, you go around you get sold a mask if you haven't got one when you get to the supermarket till.
You get sold a mask?
Yes, yes. So they have those disposable blue masks.
Worthless.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like paying lip service. You can go around the entire supermarket with no mask, but then I have to go in my bag and get my mask out before I go to the till.
It's been called a lucky charm. As effective as a lucky charm.
Yeah.
And my study says that you've got to have N95 mask before it will take anything out of the air.
Exactly. You've only got to look at virologists working in a virology lab to see that they're actually they have these huge sort of bubble suits full of air. No. Our cloth masks do absolutely nothing. They are just a method of control, and it's all part of that whole new world order thing. As I say, that's not really appearing here. I know some other countries in Central Europe have gone further down this road. Lithuania, I believe, and also Slovakia have got quite strict vaccine passports now. But here we have, Ukraine is a poor country. So we have elderly ladies here known as babushkas, grandmothers.
Yes.
They are, it's quite possible they don't even have a fridge in their apartment, let alone a smartphone. So that's not going to happen here. It's not going to wash here. And that is interesting as well. So I can't, the rest of Central and Eastern Europe, I expect large swathes of Russia are also similarly poor, and therefore this kind of thing is not going to happen. Protesting has been happening in a lot of these countries around the government's actions. I think Poland have had some quite big protests. And we just have to hope that we can push this back. Are you aware of the 444 prayer initiative, Jackson? Have you heard about it?
No, I haven't.
Right.
I usually,
This,
I usually not in on ecumenical things like that.
yeah, this one is from Rob Skiba, who is again, he's Torah observant. He just
Mhm.
came up with this idea that once a day, every day at 4:44 in the afternoon, that we would all pray wherever we are in the world and pray against the evil that's happening in the world, and ask God to turn these things back. And I think this is the important thing when we think about some Christian attitudes towards we want Christ to return. Actually, I don't think that we're meant to. We're not meant to sit by and let that happen. We're meant to get out there
Oh,
and do the
no.
work and pray and resist and fight to the end, because we know right from wrong. We've got to keep on fighting for what we know is right. I do believe over this last month or so that has had an effect. I've seen so many shifts, as it were, in the narrative, particularly coming out of Britain. A lot more protests, pieces of information coming out about people who've been harmed by the quack scene and so on. So I do hope that people will consider joining in with that. I have a channel on BitChute, which is Torah Truthers, and I've got a video up there that just gives a bit more information and a link to Rob Skiba's page. If you can't do it at 4:44 in the afternoon, do it some other time during the day, and let's see if we can continue to push this back. But I also really ask for prayers for all the Slavic nations who are continuing to fight this battle against the global agenda, which is a cultural Marxist agenda. It is anti-male, it is anti-feminine, it is anti-family, it is anti-Christ, it's anti-Christian.
Can you give us your URL for the page that you just mentioned?
So that's BitChute. I'll send you the link for it, because it's, how like channel links have all like
Then I'll
letters
put it
and
on
stuff.
here.
Yeah, great.
Yeah,
That would be
good.
lovely.
Well,
And I've also got a Telegram channel, which is Torah Truthers as well, and I'll send you the link for that if people want to join up on there. That's just a more immediate way for me to share things
Great.
when I find them, which can be useful. So please keep praying for these people who are resisting. It is a great fight that's been, that's continuing, but they have not lost yet. They are continuing to resist these globalist agendas.
Learn the history of these Slavic nations. We generally know just hardly anything. At least we can tell you what the capital of France is, or the capital of England, but very little is known about these. Study these, pray, get you a map, pray over that map if you need to, and pray for the right thing.
Yeah.
Pray for the right thing. It's the agenda. It's really an anti-Christ agenda, as well as it's an end time agenda. And I've had people here recently say to me, we don't have to really worry about anything, because the next thing that's supposed to happen is the temple is going to be rebuilt in Jerusalem. Then that'll give us a clue as to when it's going to get bad, etc. But that's, for me, that's hogwash. You're putting assumption on assumption and making your conclusions based on something that is so cryptic and old that there's no way that that's ever going to work out. It turns out to be an excuse. When there's a challenge like this, do we need an excuse to not do it? Well, we're thinking in our minds, well, I've got too many things to do. I've got to wash the windows and I've got to go to the prayer meeting and all this stuff. Is it just too much to do? And so we say, yeah, we'll wait until we get this particular sign. That is not the way it works.
No, I'm going to tell you a little. I'm going to tell you a little story.
Okay.
Because it's like we are to fight against the enemy wherever we find him, anywhere that we find him. And on my birthday, I had an awesome day on my birthday. My friend took me to the firing range. So I got to handle a gun for the first time in my
Oh,
entire life. It was
wow.
absolutely awesome. I did so well.
You liked it too.
I loved it, every minute of it. It was awesome. And then we had a lovely day in the town, and my friend had booked these tickets for the opera house. Well, we dashed back to my apartment to get changed, get into our pretty dresses and get out there. Oh, lo and behold, my phone was not going to give me a signal and I couldn't order a taxi. So we had to jump on the bus. And the bus we wanted was not the bus that was arriving at our bus stop. With okay, well, we can make do with this one. We'll jump on the number 10. Well, on the number 10 bus, this guy gets on a couple of stops further on from where we got on. This guy gets on with a young boy and he starts weeping and wailing. And it was such a sound of distress. And of course, I couldn't understand what he was saying. So I said to my friend, what is he saying? And she said, oh, it's, you know, his mother's ill and all of this. And I'm like, oh dear, you know, and I said to her, he's going to make me cry. If he keeps on this noise, he's going to make me cry because I'm really sensitive to stuff like that. I can't stand it. Can't bear to see anyone distressed. Anyway, this guy is sort of begging as he's going up the bus. And it's one of those typical long buses where you've got a door at each end and a double door in the middle. So we're in the middle of the bus. Mm. This guy comes towards me and I'm holding a pole. So he goes around the back of me and he's still begging and, you know, wailing and all this. And I just had to touch him. I just had to touch him. I put my hand on his back, just as it were a touch of comfort. And I said, God be with you. And he turned around and looked at me. And it was like this look of absolute guilt on his face. He got off the bus in the middle. He could have gone all the way to the end and carried on begging, but he didn't. He got off the bus in the middle and he stood in the street and he stared at our bus as we went off. And I'm like, what just happened?
Really?
What just happened? Yeah.
I mean, how do you explain that? What's there?
When we were in the opera house and we're sat there and I'm just quietly in my mind, I'm sort of, Lord, what just happened? Because I was really quite shaken. It's like, you know, you sometimes think it's like when you have a near miss and you're like, okay, I'm all right. Because you're not sure what's going to happen with this somewhat crazy-eyed guy on the bus. And I really felt the Lord saying that this guy felt power come out of me. Well, because that's not me, that's the Lord. And, you know, there are a lot of people here who are on drugs and a lot of people here who drink a lot of alcohol. And I don't know what it was with him, no idea. But somehow I think this guy was probably heavily demonized. And so when I touched him, it really
you felt power go out of you.
I don't know that I felt anything at the time, more just the absolute shock of, like, you know, just the situation that happened. But I really hope that will change that man's life in some way, and that it will have helped him in some way, that the Lord has moved in him, because this is one of those things that you know, there's a lot of homeless people here. Mm-hmm. And so occasionally, you know, I will hand them some money, and I'm always very discreet about it. I like to just touch their hand, give them comfort, because nobody touches them. You know, they're dirty. Right. They sit on the streets, and it's horrible.
Well, what you addressed something there? You'll never know what it is.
No.
But was CA, you were called on to address that.
Yeah, in that moment.
Heard that call, and so, especially the way he turned around and looked at you.
Yeah.
Something was addressed, something was imparted to him.
Yeah, in some way, the Lord moved in that moment, and it was astonishing to me. But that's what I mean when I say, you know, we are to fight the enemy wherever we find him. It's so important that we don't ignore what is right in front of our faces because we're waiting for something else to happen, some global thing that we have no control over. You know, the idea of waiting for this temple to be built, you know, again, we don't want that. We want more time because we want more people saved. I don't want the Messiah to come back before all of his remnant are saved, whoever they might be, who are not saved yet. And it's really important. That's how I feel about it. I know a lot of Christians don't, but that is how I feel about it. I think it's really, really important. And the fact is, as I'm saying, that in these Slavic nations, this battle is very much still you know, the enemy has not won here. Enemy's trying, but he's not winning.
Amen.
And we need spiritual reinforcements. Please do pray for these people, because they are continuing to stand their ground and resist, and it's so vital. And it's one of the reasons I love being here. I love being amongst these people.
Do you know
And
that?
I'm very honored to be here.
Gee, so I'm thinking, look at the weapon you use in fighting the enemy. Look at the weapon you used. You didn't get out a sword or something like that, or a foul mouth. What you used is not carnal. It was love. It was compassion and concern.
Yeah.
Notice when Yeshua lays hands on people, he doesn't do that without the New Testament adding that he had compassion. He was moved inside.
Yeah.
And I feel very certainly that what you received there was a good sign for you to keep at that. It was exactly the same as the model that Messiah gave to us for fighting evil. Thank you for mentioning that. Pray more, even more than pray. Do. There's ministries in front of you wherever you go every day that you could be addressing if you were tuned in. Get tuned in. Amen.
Yeah.
Well, when's the next time we're going to see you, Les?
Maybe next week, if you'd like to.
Excellent.
I have a list of subjects to talk about, but this one really came up for me after last week's show. I really felt the Lord wanted me to share about the situation here. And so I thought that would be a good subject, and also a sign of hope. You know, we know that in Britain and in America and so many other countries, the agenda is rolling on, you know, like a steamroller over everything. It's not happening here yet. Let's pray that it does not, and that these people are able to continue resisting it.
Well, sis, until next week, we'll see you then. I'm feeling a little better.
I'm so pleased to hear that.
I was able to get up okay today. And remember, folks, there is a time difference.
Yes, a very big time difference
between us. It's later at night there, and it's about the time I get up here.
Yep.
So that's another thing that you could keep in your prayer, that the Father will change the whole time system. Praise goes, know that you will continue to pray for Les and for me too, as we go on with the ministry that we're fulfilling here for you. And we know you will, and we thank you so much. And sis, love you.
Love you too. Thank you so much.
And don't forget, we're going to the opera one of these days.
Oh, that would be awesome. Yeah, you'll have to see when they'll let you out of the US, and maybe you'll come and visit me. That would be great.
Isn't that something? So and when is that? Who knows?
Who knows with the way things are. I wouldn't necessarily come in the winter. It'll be very snowy here, but maybe spring, summer next year. That would be really nice.
That sounds good.
Yeah.